Wondering which iPad is best, the new iPad Air or perhaps the iPad Pro? Are you about to buy one but can't quite tell the differences between the iPad Air or the iPad Pro? Well, in this video I'm going to talk about the differences and hopefully help you make the same decision that I'm having to make right now, which is which one should I buy? For those of you new to the channel, hi, my name is Pete Matheson and I make videos around tech like this, so please do subscribe if you want more. That'd be appreciated. Apple recently launched their brand new iPad Air, which is nearly identical to the specs of the iPad Pro. So in this video, we're going to touch on all of these differences, and then towards the end, I'm going to sum up which one I'm going to be choosing and why. Now, the main difference, of course, is the price difference, with the base model iPad Air with 64GB of storage coming in at $579, and the base model iPad Pro, which starts at 128GB of storage, is $769. So there is a £90 difference between the two here in the UK, but obviously different in storage in those prices as well. And also, FYI, the models I have here are the 256GB iPad Air and the 128GB Pro. Now, first up is the display, with the iPad Air having a 10.9-inch Liquid Retina display and the iPad Pro having the 11-inch ProMotion Liquid Retina display. And personally, and to be honest, this isn't probably something you'd really notice unless you had both of these side by side like I do. I mean, certainly the size is just, well, I couldn't honestly tell you that one was 0.1 inches smaller than the other one, but I said they're identical. But the ProMotion definitely is something that I noticed on the Pro, and basically it means the iPad Pro screen has a higher refresh rate and faster display, so things definitely look smoother. But of course, with that said, it's impossible for me to show this to you unless I upload this actual video in 120 frames per second, which would just be insane. So they'll probably look the same to you over YouTube and compression and everything, but trust me, ProMotion does look really nice. Now, the displays also have differences in how bright they can go, with the iPad Air hitting 500 nits, but the Pro goes up to 600 nits. Whilst this doesn't really seem like a huge difference, if you are someone who works outside, and particularly when it's sunny, then that extra 100 nit brightness can make a huge difference. Next is the inner chips that actually are inside these devices. So the iPad Air has the A14 Bionic chip, whereas the iPad Pro has the A12Z Bionic chip, which is older than the Air because, well, the Air is the newest one. But the iPad Air is cheaper. And to be honest, both of these are super snappy. Whilst I've been switching the two, I couldn't really put my finger on which one is faster than the other, though I do expect Apple to bring out an updated iPad Pro in the near future to fix that difference. When it comes to storage, then the base model iPad Air comes in with 64GB of storage, whereas the base model Pro comes with 128GB of storage. Now, you can spec up the Air to 256GB, which is pretty good, but you can spec the iPad Pro right up to a huge 1TB of storage, which is a huge amount, and I guess great if you're a content creator who likes to store and edit large files, or maybe someone who uses their iPad as their only computer. For cameras, the Air just has a single 12-megapixel wide camera versus the iPad Pro's dual 12-megapixel wide camera and 10-megapixel ultra-wide camera. Though, to be honest, I don't think I've ever used the camera on an iPad, like ever. So for me, the cameras don't really matter, and the wide camera is an f1.8 aperture and the ultra-wide is a f2.4. Now, when it comes to the front-facing camera, then on the Pro, you'll also get portrait mode as well as the Animoji and Memoji things. And the only other difference you can see on the spec sheet is the Pro has a brighter True Tone flash. But again, who's really using an iPad Pro as a camera nowadays? Weight-wise, the iPad Air weighs 458 grams versus the iPad Pro's 471 grams. Well, so the Air really isn't Air then? Again, to be honest, no noticeable differences when holding both of them, though maybe I can just about tell that this one is heavier, which probably is just my subconscious because this is the Pro. So who knows? In terms of audio, well, the iPad Air has a 2-speaker system versus the iPad Pro's 4-speaker system, which I think sounded slightly better, but overall volume-wise, they are both about the same max volume, and if you're thinking 2 speakers means double as loud. Then, of course, one of the biggest differences here is the FaceID versus TouchID. Now, the iPad Air has TouchID, which is now integrated with the power button over the top, whereas the iPad Pro, of course, has FaceID using the same built-in camera technology. And I have to say that I find FaceID a much better system to use overall. You just pick up the iPad and it's already unlocked before you even get to reach your hand to swipe up. Whereas with the iPad Air, to be honest, whilst it is easy to use, it did mean I have to go hunting sometimes for that touch button because, if you're holding it slightly differently. But it does give you a nice indication where that touch button is, depending on how you're holding the iPad Air. So that is quite nice. But to be fair, there have been a couple of times where I've picked up the iPad Pro and it hasn't been able to unlock using Face ID because I've been covering the camera. But it is so quick to recognise once you've moved your hand that I just don't think it even competes with Touch ID. Though, of course, with that said, and in today's world of social distancing. If you are using this out and about a lot and having to wear a mask whilst using the iPad Pro, then actually the iPad Air would be a better choice because, well, we all know how painful Face ID can be when wearing a mask, so there's some food for thought. And lastly, in terms of differences, we have the LiDAR scanner on the Pro, which the Air doesn't have. Now, the LiDAR scanner is something I saw a ton of info about when the Pro was actually launched, and it's been included in the new iPhone 12 range, but I'm yet to see any actual real-world useful implementation of it. I have no doubt at all that it's going to be something incredible, but it's still in its early phase, and in my opinion, it's something that having a LiDAR scanner isn't really a feature where I think, oh wow, I really want that one because it's the LiDAR. No, just no, not yet. So, those are all the differences, but what about the similarities? Well, both of these work with the Magic Keyboard case and the second generation only of the Apple Pencil. They both have USB-C instead of Lightning, but I just wish that Apple would standardize and just put USB-C on everything, and iPhones as well. Both of these are also the same physical dimensions, except they squeezed that extra 0.1 inch from the screen. The same battery life of 10 hours web surfing on Wi-Fi. Though, have you seen the battery life of those new M1 Max? That is just insane. Maybe they'll bring some of those efficiencies over to the iPad soon, but oh, by the way, I did make a video recently about comparing my near $4,000 16-inch MacBook Pro to the very cheapest M1 MacBook Air. So I highly recommend watching that. Go up here or down below if you want to be shocked. They both have exactly the same video recording, 4K at 24, 30, 60 FPS, same slow-mo, time-lapse, and all of that stuff, just everything else is identical. And if you were to spec these up similar in terms of storage, which is at 256 gig, then you're talking a £140 difference, which means it's decision time on which one should you get and which one do you think I'll be keeping. And the decision will of course be different depending on your needs and wants. If you need more storage to watch videos whilst you're traveling, then the 256 gig Air is great value, and you honestly won't notice the lack of ProMotion display and pretty much all the rest of the other features. For me, it comes down to a few things, I think. I don't travel much because, well, like most people, pandemic, though that will hopefully change soon. And even when I do, I don't think I need 256 gigabytes of storage. What I do notice is Face ID, and I find it's just so much easier to use the iPad Pro because with the Air you have to sometimes fiddle with finding the button, which could be at an awkward angle if you're resting on your lap or something. So for the combination of Face ID, ProMotion display, also I think the extra 100 nit brightness just in case we ever see the sun here in England again, as it does make a difference when using it outside. All of these reasons, even though it has less storage and an older generation A12Z Bionic chip. So my decision, I think, is to pick the 128 gig iPad Pro over the 256 gig iPad Air. Now it is worth mentioning that I used both of these with the iPad Magic Keyboard, and they both work exactly the same way. It gives you just a far more comfortable way to type, and includes a mouse pad, which I'll be honest, I always just reach up and touch the screen still. It's just force of habit. Now I will of course drop links in the description below. You can actually currently get both the iPad Air and the iPad Pro slightly cheaper than shopping direct to Apple, so I'll put those links there. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Like the video if you did, hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are posted, and I'll leave you with a conundrum. Because if you're buying an iPad Air or a Pro, and then another £300-ish on a Magic Keyboard, which, yes, is a very expensive keyboard, then this immediately puts you into the bracket of the new M1 MacBook Air, which is cheaper and has double the battery life of any iPad, and a bigger screen, and a faster CPU, and the full OS X operating system without any of the iPad limitations. Well, damn, that's an interesting conundrum. Bye-bye.